Welcome to Verses and Visions Creative Conversations, where creativity and purpose meet to inspire and uplift. I'm Cassidy Beck, your host, here to explore the stories of artists, dreamers, and changemakers who are walking in faith and using their unique gifts to make a difference. Each episode is a reminder that your vision, paired with God's purpose, can transform the world around you. Let's get started and spark some inspiration together.
At Verses and Visions, we're grateful for partners who support creativity, faith, and meaningful conversations. We're pleased to share a message from one of them.
Hey friends, before we jump into today's conversation, I've been thinking about those small, meaningful things that bring us together. For me, that's often sharing a bottle from my family's premium soda company, Soda Beers. Whether it's crisp ginger beer, smooth butterscotch beer, classic root beer, original apple beer, or apple beer 5, our low-calorie twist, each flavor is a small little reminder of home and of the simple joys. Okay, now let's dive. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, to tell you more about Tracy, Tracy D. Smith is an author and educator, a podcaster, and a lifelong learner whose path has been anything but linear. After serving a mission in Thailand, she earned her degree in political science from Brigham Young University, Hawaii, and later a master's degree from Western Governors University. Her career has spanned teaching, homeschooling, international education, publishing, and even real estate. After being diagnosed with multiple autoimmune conditions, Tracy stepped away from full-time teaching, an unexpected pivot that led her deeper into writing. She's the author of First Lady of Jamestown, Threads of Faith, and the children's series The Timeless Adventure of Kiki and George. She also hosts the podcast History's Unsung Heroes and serves as an editor for LBS PMA podcast called Create. So Tracy, first question, tell me something like a book, a quote, or story that you're finding inspiration from right now.
I am actually writing book 2 of my children's series. It's where 2 children travel through United States history. They time travel. And I'm writing about Sybil Ludington. And I am just inspired by her story. She was a 16-year-old girl. Her father was a colonel during the Revolutionary War. And he was actually a spy with John Jay for George Washington. And she would oftentimes help him. And when it came time, the British were coming into Danbury, Connecticut. And she, for some reason, was selected, or she volunteered to go and round up the militia. Now, the militia had already dispersed for the season and were in their own homes. So she rounded up about 400 men over 40 miles, rode through the night by herself, and was able to collect all the men so they were able to fight off the British from coming more inland. And the interesting part is, with a lot of women, and especially during the Revolutionary War, we don't really hear about them until maybe 100 years after the fact, when it's more of a family story they wrote down, or neighbors had written it down, and then it's coming to fruition or coming to be known. And I am just so impressed with Sybil. I feel like we oftentimes will pre-suffer with anxiety and worry about outcomes of things instead of trusting in the Lord and trusting in our own ability to just do what we can do. She didn't know what was going to happen. She didn't know if she was going to get arrested or if her father was going to get arrested. It's pitch black and she's riding through forests and dark, dark trails. And she just did it. And she never got recognition in this life. And so I feel like very inspired by her and other people that are just ordinary people trying their best to do what they can within their own sphere.
What an inspirational story, and that's really incredible. How do you find these heroes that you expand and help tell their stories?
I do host a podcast, History's Unsung Heroes, so I'm kind of just diving into the lesser known ones. Oftentimes, I read as much as I can, and if I hear a side character that's kind of thrown in there, I try to go to the source and then develop their story. Sometimes I'll pick a specific time period, or maybe women or African Americans that we don't know as many stories about, and try to focus more on them. Um, but sometimes, honestly, most of it, I come through prayer and really trying to seek it out. And I feel like they're just evolving and kind of happen. A lot of them are family stories. That's where most of my novels have come through when I'm online doing family search or genealogy. And I'm like, this is the coolest person. Why don't we know anything about them? And especially focusing on United States history.
That's awesome. It reminds me of
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was wanting to do on my podcast, all these women in United States history that are influencing. Heather B. Moore is one of my favorites, and she also has one coming out about women in United States history. there are so many really neat stories. One of them is she's a Quaker, and the Quakers are being arrested by the dozens during the first, 17th century, and she goes in and she was like, gets her friends out of jail, and then she eventually is martyred. But just these stories of these heroic women, it's just their bravery astonishes me.
It's really important work because, history is there's so many millions of stories within our history that
Right.
and not a lot of them are told. And so I think that's really important work that you're doing.
Thank you. I definitely feel like the Lord is leading me in it, and I feel like the people on the other side of the veil are like, "Please share my story." Like, I genuinely feel drawn, and I feel unsettled if I don't. Like, I feel like it's a constant nudge in a good way where, things are just happening, and the interesting part is the more I do research. I was in New Jersey researching my direct aunts that were 2 women who fought off the British during the Revolutionary War from coming to their Jersey Shore and saved the whole town, just these 2 women. And I went there and, like, didn't know anybody, and all of a sudden, I found a portrait of the whole event, and then somebody gave me a painting a picture actually, from the 1800s of the 1700s home, and all these local stories, and I'm just, like, blown away, and I feel like the Lord is just opening these doors, and I think it's partly because I'm willing and I want that, and it's just coming, and then I'm able to, like, manifest it through a novel series, through a book, so I can tell other people their stories.
It's incredible. So I feel like your path has had a lot of pivots. Tell me like where you've seen God help you through those or help you guide those turns.
Yeah, I got my master's degree, and I finished my oral defense of my thesis when my oldest was a week old, so I literally was holding her, nursing, and doing a phone call at the same time. And then I had been home, and I tutored and all these things for years, but I'm always home with my children. And then when my youngest, was in 1st grade age, we were homeschooling at the time, and the Lord was very much, "You need to stop homeschooling. Everyone goes back." And I was like, "Whoa, that is a big deal to have homeschooling to mom's teaching, and we're all in school." And, it was definitely a shock, and none of us wanted to. We all wanted to homeschool, but it was like, "That's not what you're supposed to do." Like, "Okay." So, I got a job as a 5th grade teacher and went back, and that was the first time in, like, 15 years, and it was a huge adjustment for our whole family. And then my autoimmune stuff, which I already knew was there, I was on medication. I had been on medication for like 10 years. It just wreaked havoc. My body was like, "What are you doing?" My doctors told me several times, "You need to quit. This is really dangerous." And so it was so hard. It makes me tear up because I feel like the Lord was like, "You need to do this year. Just do this year." And I had a couple kids where the moms were like, "Hey, he hid in the bathroom every day since elementary, since kindergarten. This is the first time he's coming to class and he actually wants to be there." And I'm like, maybe it was just for that child. I don't know. But ironically, I finished out the year. I even had surgery and got COVID during that year. And I'm on immunosuppressants. So it was so bad. But I love those kids so much. And I felt like they were my kids. And then we ended up moving to Cache Valley. And the Lord's like, "Don't teach." I'm like, "Okay." I taught 1 year after going back, and, my health just got worse, but it was kind of ironic because that opened up to the book writing where I had stories from my own children, family stories for United States history that I was compiling during homeschooling, and I hadn't touched them in about a year when I was teaching, and the Lord's like, "You need to pick that up again." And I started writing, and a friend in my ward is actually from Virginia, and we live there as well, and I was writing about the first English woman to come to Jamestown and survive that period of time, and she's like, "Oh, I used to live out there," and she's like, "I'm the president of the writing group here. You wanna come?" I'm like, "I'm not a writer." I don't even know if I could spell great, like, and I just went, and I literally was shaking the first time I introduced my chapter to them, and so nervous, but everyone was amazing, gave me such positive, but also really constructive feedback, and it just turned into this, and then I met a publisher, and then I got my 2nd book, and it's just so neat how it just keeps going forward, and I never would have thought that. I actually was looking for jobs, and I got out here, and it felt so wrong, which didn't make sense. I'm like, "Why go through all this school? Why anticipate this for the 15, 16 years I was home with children to not be able to use that skill set?" But now I feel like the Lord's like, listen, you're teaching history through literature, and that's your new goal, and that's your focus, and that's what you need to create. And so I am using those skills, but in a different way where I can also take care of my body and take care of my family and still teach. And I go into homeschool groups and I go into schools and I just love it. And I literally feel like that's the cap my body can handle as well. It's kind of interesting how I get this surge of energy. And afterward, I'm like, I realize now I can't do that. I can't be on my feet all day anymore because I'm more of like a squat by the kid and talk to them and walk around. I can't just sit it. So it has been such a journey. And I feel like the Lord is so aware of me. It makes me cry, but he really is. And he knows what is going to happen. And so he's preparing you. And I feel like when you are open to that and open to the spirit, even though it's so hard to change and so hard to pivot, when you have worked so hard towards a goal, I feel like it's more of like hopping islands. You get to that island and you need to see from that point of view until you can see the other. You can't just go a straight line. A lot of times you have to just jump and then you can jump to where you need to be. And I feel like it's really important for us to be open to that, even though it's really, really hard.
So I know with these like significant issues that you've had or health challenges that you've had a lot of like kind of shifting careers. I'm curious about this season that you've gone through that you've described. Like, what did that teach you about surrendering and just trusting God's timing, like trusting in God's plan and also His timing?
Yeah, I have lots of tears and lots of anger, to be honest, and such like that feeling in your gut, like, oh, this doesn't make sense, or I know what I need to do, but it's so hard to be so vulnerable and put myself out there. Like, I'm like, yeah, read my book. I'll teach you all about it, but don't make me do an author page. And like, it's like trying to put my own face on the product, I guess, is very difficult for me because I'm like, I want you to learn. Aren't these stories cool? But it's hard to do like the marketing and the background. And I feel like the Lord's like, listen, these are things you need to do. My friend Tracy Daly reached out to me. She's also an author, and she's like, hey, do you, want a job? I'm like, "No." Like, I have so much going on, and I don't know if I can handle it, and she's like, "I know that you can make your own decision, and I respect that, but I really prayed about it, and I really feel like the Lord wanted me to reach out to you." I'm like, "Okay." See, so then I took it back to the Lord, and 100% I should, and I've been helping her with her publishing company, and it has opened up my mind to how the marketing works, how to write. I never wrote a blog before. Now I've written like 30, and all these things that I never thought I would do and all the technical side, which I've always steered away from. And I feel like the Lord is just like, hey, if you do the hard work, I will give you the direction. And so it's been this relationship with him where I have had to trust a lot more, especially like the health and letting go of, the finance part of like, just this is what it is. It might take a long time for things to bring in, and that's okay. Just trust me, you need to do it. So it's definitely been a learning experience.
Well, it feels like as you've gone through these changes, like you've relied on your faith a lot. That's one of the things that I hear you saying. Can you kind of like walk me through that? How did that show up for you?
I feel like with some of my diseases, so I'm totally fine to talk about it, but I have ankylosing spondylitis, which is it's an autoimmune disease that affects your major joints. So think of an ankylosaurus, where it's like the spurs. The reason they say that is because you can get bone spurs. Your joints can fuse into bone. So my SI joints, my secret iliac joints are fused, which can shift my hips out of place. Sometimes I can't stand up straight. It also attacks my eye. I've had times where I've almost been blind, and that has been to trust that God's got you, even if that happened. It has been a journey for sure. I also have Sjogren's, which is like a sister to lupus, and that has attacked my spleen and my liver. It shuts down the mucous membrane production. So again, my eyes and saliva, and it feels like pain in the joints and achy all over like a weighted blanket. And then celiacs can literally rip holes in your intestines and destroy your villi that absorb nutrients. And it has been where I've had to rely so much on the Lord. We lived in Washington, D.C. for a long time. We were in Virginia for about 10 years, and the people out there became my family. I couldn't have done it without him because I feel like I've had times where, but I'm so grateful. Like, this is like grateful tears, but where I'm like, okay, my eyes are going. My husband's in like Singapore, whatever for work. I have these 3 little kids. I can't see and I can't leave my kids. And it's like 2 in the morning. A girlfriend comes over, watches my kids. The other one comes and drives them to the ER. And it's just like this process of being so vulnerable and having to rely on other people also made me feel like I had to rely on the Lord and trust that He's got me and my Relief Society sisters have me. And it's been really hard because it's so humbling and it's embarrassing, even though I know I shouldn't be, because it's not like no, there's nothing wrong with that. But not, I had a baby, they bring you a meal. It's like, oh, there she is again. Last month, we also took her to the emergency room. And so I feel embarrassed in the fact that I have to continuously need help. But it also has really humbled me to the point where, like, you know what? The acceptance of like, that just is what it is. And that's okay. And I'm trying to focus on what I can control. And I have to give the rest to the Lord because I can't. And there are times when I'm okay. Like right now, I'm an okay-ish spot, but about 2 months ago, my spleen was enlarged. So it's just this roller coaster of the ups and downs and trying to learn. I can do this. I can teach, especially when I go visit a class, and then maybe I'll hurt the next day, and I'm like, oh, I need to remember this instead of like, but I'm me. I'm me. And like, you're still you. It's just different. And so I have to pivot that. And then, okay, Heavenly Father, I need to know when my limit is. And sometimes I don't. I was an athlete and I don't know when physically I hit my limit until it's too late sometimes. And so I've been trying to have more of an open relationship with Him. It's like, if you tell me it's a little too late or I can feel it, I promise I'll back off, And so I'm trying to not be so stubborn, which is very difficult. But yeah, it's been a give and take, and I'm not perfect at it, and I have my hard days, and I have my good days, and I know everyone has their own experiences with it.
I hear so much in what you're saying. I think, like, I'm putting myself in your shoes when in that moment that you were describing where your eye, like, you couldn't see. And that is scary. Like,
Terrifying.
just having lost your sight and then so you're scared about the health, but then also like you're alone in it because your husband, though he's wonderful, is not
Yes,
physically
he used to
available
travel
for
a
you.
lot.
He's traveled, so he's gone. And so then you have that vulnerability of like, this is a problem then seeking help and asking and putting yourself out there and admitting that it feels like it's a very layered difficulty. And it's incredible. And I imagine there's been quite a lot of strength that you've developed because of this. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think you're never not in pain. People are always like, "Oh, how are you doing today?" I'm like, "Good." You know what I mean? And maybe if somebody else is my body, they'd be like, "It's hard." But I'm so used to just having some sub layer of pain that I feel like my tolerance is there, and I know when it's like, "Oh, I need to go in." You can tell the difference. But I feel like my empathy has raised so much, and there's so many people that struggle with different variations of health, whether it be mental health, physical health, or their family member. And I feel like it has been where people have reached out to me that I haven't talked to in maybe 20 years. Or I almost passed away with my youngest and had 3 surgeries within 3 months, including a hysterectomy. And, went from pregnant to menopausal. And it just rocked my world. But I probably have had about 5 different women reach out to me. Hey, I'm terrified. I have to have a hysterectomy. I know that you had to go through that. And it's just like, that tender mercy where you can really help other people. And that's what it's about. I don't feel like our experience on earth is supposed to be a smooth sailing because then how are you supposed to grow? How are you supposed to connect with people? And how are you supposed to influence others when you've had nothing in your own life that you can draw from? And not that everyone has to go through these different experiences, but I think that's one of the things that have really touched my heart is seeing other people that need help or that I could just be an ear for them to like vent to or talk to, or maybe even give suggestions to. I'm not a doctor by any means, but I had somebody the other day, they're like, "Oh, do you have a medical degree?" I'm like, "No, I just have had to be my own advocate and learn." And that's part of the process too. And I'm grateful in a way. I never understood my body more than I ever have my whole life until I have this last few years because I have to dig deeper. And I do feel like our spirit and our body are so connected. And part of the reason we're on this earth is to learn how to navigate that. So it's been a lot, but really amazing too. I don't know if I'd want to sign up again, but I I feel like that's why we don't know on purpose because it is what's best for us.
We'll return to today's conversation in just a moment.
You know how much I love sharing stories that inspire faith and hope. I'm excited to tell you about my new children's book, Sheep Chronicles Baptism. It's about Joshua, a curious boy with big questions about baptism, and the parable of a lost sheep named Shannon, shared by his wise grandpa. It's been such a joy to write this story, and I can't wait for you and your family to read it together.
Now back to the episode.
One of the things that I've heard you saying is it seems like inspiration comes to you very specifically. And I'm curious, is that like a pattern that you've seen throughout your life, or has it like gotten more specific, like when you need it to be? Or tell me a little bit how inspiration works for you.
Yeah, I do feel like it's very specific. Not to go into too many detail, there's a lot of big things that happened when I was a child and lots of divorces. And my dad died when I was 13, and my family didn't go to church. And my sister now go by herself, but then I went by myself. And I felt like for me, I just needed the Lord so bad. You just ache for it. And I feel like Heavenly Father was always there and the Savior's always there. And I felt like I always had these little moments in my life. I look back, I'm like, oh, I was really inspired to do that. Like little things, but sometimes really big and specific things. I've always been really drawn to genealogy, and I feel like that kept me active, to be honest. My mom, even though she wasn't active, she would drive me to LA, which is I'm from Southern California, so sometimes like an hour and a half, 2 hours, just so I can do baptism. She sit outside, which is amazing. And because it was so important to me. And even like the stories I have now, like this one was my family story. And I interviewed, I'm not going to say who it is because it'll ruin the story. I interviewed this family member before my mission, and I just felt like I was drawn to do that. And then like 15 years later, I finally found like remembered the interview. I don't even have the tape anymore. And then I researched it and I'm like, oh, this was real. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. And then it just all this information came out of the woodwork. It's like, you need to write it. And it just compiled into a story. And it's just one thing led to another. So I feel like I just need extra help. And the Lord's like, listen, you need a little bit more than most people. Here's some guidance because you're stubborn. So, yeah, I mean, I still have to figure that out. But for me, it's just like this urgency. I don't know, everyone feels the spirit differently. I feel like the Lord's like, and not in an anxious way, but like I just get excited about an idea and it feels like I gotta make this grow. Like this is so cool. And then I feel like I'm always just drawn to it and I can't put it down. That's kind of how I receive inspiration.
So I'm curious, like, how do you discern where to focus your time and creative energy?
Yeah, that's really hard because I have children and then I have my health. And then we thought my husband was getting laid off last year. So I got my real estate license. And now things are kind of happening with that I never thought I would do. So I'm trying to dive into all, which is difficult. I feel like I try to just set realistic goals for myself and set down even my schedule and then pray about it and then be flexible for shifting. And there's moments where I'm like, oh, I won't have time to do that. And then something open up that I do. And if I don't get time to write, I'm like, it's okay. So I'm trying to have what my daughter and I call grit and grace. If you've heard that saying, it's like have the resilience and the tenacity, like you can do hard things and also have grace for yourself and other people. Like it's okay. If I don't write this chapter this week, it's okay. So I try to figure out the balance in that sense of what needs to be done today. I have like the week scope, but just like try to be more present in the moment. I had somebody tell me once, like, if you are always asking the what ifs, it's anxiety versus that clarity of like, it's okay, whatever happens. This is my goal and trajectory. So, like, what about this? What about this? And I'm like, that's my anxiety talking. Take a step back, be present in the moment. And then what can I accomplish or what can I learn from this?
So I feel like, if I understand your journey correctly, you kind of started with a interview, like a family interview. And I'm curious, like, what did that teach you about kind of beginning before you totally feel ready?
That's a good question. Yeah, it was a genealogy class I had when I was at UVSC, when it was UVSC a long time ago. And I think it taught me too, like a lot of the novels, when I first started, I'm like, I have to count it out. But really, when I think about it, I've been doing research for a lot of these for several years. And that it is more of that puzzle piece. I feel like sometimes you gather that information and then you can see the bigger picture. And I feel like that's how it is kind of in real life, where you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then sometimes you get that glimpse where you can see, oh, I know why I majored in political science and then went into teaching, or you know what I mean? How it kind of comes together. But that was also neat for me because after that interview, several years later, when I was figuring out I should write a novel about this, I tried to ask all the family members that were alive about the stories, and they're like, "You never told us anything about the war, like zero." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness." So I felt even more impressed, like, how cool is that I was able to talk to him before he died and write it down. And so, I feel like that is the thing we need to remember too, is just like, if you get those inspirations, or even if it's a class assignment, like, it is really important to do it. There's a rhyme and a reason why the Lord is telling us to do certain things.
So you've gone through a lot of things, and I think, like, with your health journey, with creating, and I think there, as any creator knows, I feel like there's a lot of experience about, like, having self-doubt, or am I the right person, or is this the right time? What would you tell someone that might be feeling those feelings right now?
I think a lot of the expectations that we put on ourselves are too heavy. And sometimes it's just the motion of doing something and putting something out there that will let you learn from those experiences. I feel like we have to be perfect and we don't. And just do. And I know that sounds so easy, but if you feel inspired to do it, just put it out there. If it's not perfect, that's okay. How can you improve the next time? But you're never going to get to the goal of something really done well if you don't produce the things that aren't done well, if that makes sense. I think it's just the process of doing. And again, if you were constantly like, what if this? That's not from Heavenly Father. That is Satan trying to take you down because he does not want you to create. He does not want you to accomplish. He wants you to feel like you are not enough. And I still struggle with that. I feel like, oh, I have to do this and then it'll be good enough. And it's like, but you're doing right now. Like I always tell my husband, I'm trying. He's like, stop saying you're trying. You're doing. Like, yes, you were trying, but like just get it out there and then learn and grow. But you are enough. Like you're a daughter or a son of God. You have the skill sets you need. And if you don't, you will learn them if you feel inspired to do something. It's okay to take the baby steps.
I love that answer. So, I think a lot of times it's like easy, like with our life pivots, it's easy to kind of like in hindsight be like, oh, I see what you were doing there. Like, I see why I needed this information. I see why I had that interview and got this information and this skill set. Because then it kind of like connects, although not like linearly, but like you can kind of see the flow. But I think in the moment, it's hard to see that. So my question for you is, what would you say to someone whose path just doesn't seem like it makes sense at all?
I try to tell myself and even friends that are struggling with different things that, and my children, like two things can be true at the same time. This sucks. This is hard. It doesn't seem fair. And you're going to be okay. And we don't understand why. And you might not ever understand why, but it's the human experience you're having right now. And it's okay to be in it. It's okay to have all the feels, to be angry, to be hurt, be sad, be bitter, and be hopeful at the same time. Like, I feel like we always feel like there has to be one feeling or one emotion over another, and it really is convoluted. Like, it's all meshed in together too, and I feel like that is important to just give ourselves that grace and take a step back. Like, it's okay to say this is hard because I feel like we need to also accept what's going on and, yes, still be looking forward. I feel like as Latter-day Saints, sometimes we're like, "Oh, I'm not being faithful if I'm not happy," or I'm not being hopeful and I shouldn't be mad. I'm like, I feel like all of our feelings are given as gifts. Even the Savior drove them out of the temple because it wasn't appropriate, and I feel like there's a time and a place, and it's okay to accept all the things and strive our best to have faith and trust in the Lord and then bring it to the Lord. Like, be honest with Him and be vulnerable and tell Him all your feelings. And then try to accept that, but also move forward at the same time. And that is very difficult to do. But I think we need to be allowing ourselves a little bit more leeway in that feeling.
I feel like you just hit on something really powerful there, and I really like it, and I think that's been my experience too. In fact, there was like I had lost my father, and someone had said like that I didn't need to be sad because I knew that I would like see him again, and that we had that knowledge, and that is true. Like I do have the faith that I will that this life is not the end. and that there is life after death. I do believe that. And also, my hope is that I have a long life, which means that I'm not going to see my father for a very long time. And that sucks. And it's hard. And it's okay to be sad about that, as well as being faithful. And I couldn't agree with you more, Tracy, that you can have those two feelings and that they can exist and that you can be sad and you can be faithful. And I totally agree with you that we need to make more room for both of those things being true.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people's intentions are really good, but it feels like a slap in the face sometimes. And you're like, I just lost one of my best friends. Why can't I mourn that? And part of the mourning process is allowing you to feel the feels. So I 100% agree. And I'm sorry that's hard. But yeah, it's okay to have hope because I believe in 100% I'll see my dad again. And I feel like he was always with me. But I really wish I had him when I was growing up. It just is what it is. And yeah.
So I feel like, how do you feel like you're using your gift to inspire others today?
I hope I am. But yeah, we have this neighborhood book club, and one of my cute neighbors is like, I want to write a book. And his mom's like, oh, that's so fun. Why do you want to write a book? Because Miss Tracy did. I'm like, I love you so much. And that's what it's about, right? Or I went to this homeschool group and I was teaching them, and then one of the girls grabbed one of my, or not grabbed in a bad way. She bought one of my books. I think it was First Day at Jamestown. And her mom's like, she couldn't find her and she found her reading just like after everyone's playing. I'm like, I love that. And it's just fun to see them excited and to spark feelings to other people. And also be like, people that know me, look, I have struggled with spelling. I will mumble, and I have like things that I struggle with. And I never felt it was smart growing up. And then it's just like, I can do it. I'm not perfect, but I'm putting the effort in and I'm doing my best. And I feel like the Lord is like expanding upon what I can't. And I'm just trying. And so it's just been neat to also see that. And my whole goal really truly is to teach people to feel like, what was it like for people in history? They're human like we are. What kind of experience they have? Can I relate to them? And it's neat to see that kind of happening. And I'm hoping it will keep happening. And all I can do is just put it out there for people.
So what do you feel like in the time that we are right now? Like, what do you feel like God is kind of teaching you right now in your current era?
I think Kind of I think to be more confident, putting yourself out there like this is a big deal. And real estate too. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's a bit of a fire hose. But I'm like, you can build skills. And it's important, whatever age you are, to build skills and to learn new things and to challenge yourself. And so I feel like he's like, hey, you got this. You're gonna make mistakes and that's okay. But I want you to try. So it's uncomfortable to a teaching degree, if that makes sense.
Okay. Time travel. Where are you going? Could go anywhere.
Oh, that is a good question. Oh, I really like the Revolutionary War period. I know that sounds weird because it's like in the middle of a war, but I just think they were so brave. I mean, it really was so confusing. We look back now and we're like, oh, yeah, of course you're going to be patriotic. For them, being patriotic meant you were loyal to the king because they were English. And it was family against family, and you don't know who is who. And I just love that they just were able to, one, decipher, which is really hard. And I'm sure there's a lot of prayer. But I feel like at the time, the colonists were pretty religious people and they really strived. And I think that's one reason the Lord blessed them with so many opportunities. If you look at the Revolutionary War, they really should not have won. They're this maybe 1 million people versus one of the biggest navies in the world. And to the point where the British like scoffed and kind of laughed when it was happening, to the point where the British lost because they didn't deliberately fight in the beginning. And it's just interesting. And there was stuff where Jamestown, half the ships were wiped off before they got to Jamestown, the British ships. There was an ice storm that froze over, so they were able to pull the 2,000-pound cannons when normally it'd be stuck in mud. Like so many natural things too. And I feel like it'd be neat to see that. And I feel like we have it in our day. We're just not seeing it as much or even looking maybe as much as we should. But yeah, I just like that time period because I thought there's so many miracles that you can literally see with your own eyes. It was so cool.
Yes. And I also think it's incredible the collection of people that were together, that were contemporaries at that time in that place, like that they were able to kind of come together and build a nation that they had the similar ideas. And it was, I mean, I feel like that is one of the miracles as well that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think they said like, no, I'm not quoting it directly, but I think it was like 177 countries have mirrored their constitution after ours, at least portions of it. And I mean, that happened later, but it's just the whole thing. One of my favorite papers I always show the students is the Declaration of Independence draft. There's crossed out marks, there's swiggle lines, there's ink stains. And I'm like, it was messy. And John Adams and Benjamin Franklin were on the committee. It wasn't just Thomas Jefferson. And it's just neat to see just the work and the prayers and the tears and sweat they put into making it like the right document and how inspired that was. And like you said, having those group of men and women together, I'm like, how cool. It was definitely meant to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, what's your perfect creative day?
Ooh, that's a good question. Definitely having the actual time to write down. It just feels so good. Like yesterday, I was writing a chapter about, again, Sybil, and she was able to learn a lot of the code to decipher for the correspondence with John Jay, and they had invisible ink. So I'm writing this story about invisible ink, and then she puts the fire by it and it glows. And I'm like, this is so cool. So it's like, it geeks me out that I'm writing, but I'll write and then I'll research, even though I've researched already a lot. And I'm like, oh, and what did the ink well look like? And then, so it's just, I love that because it feels like I'm discovering and it's like this treasure hunt as I write. So I love chapters like that I'm like, oh, I want to be as accurate as to details as possible and put all the sources in. So I feel like I'm learning, or I love visiting like reenactment places. We lived in Williamsburg, Virginia. So next to Colonialisburg for like 3 years, Jamestown, Yorktown. So I used to take my babies, and even if it was just me and the baby, I just nurse and walk around, do the tours like a dork. But I love it. I think it's so cool.
What an amazing opportunity to spend so much time, because I think, like, when you're visiting, even if it's like a week or 2 weeks, you can't see everything, all of the history that is in that location. But if you're there for 3 years, you
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
you'll be able
Try.
to, yeah, hopefully try a little bit more. But still, there's just it's so much history in that. And what an amazing opportunity you had for sure. Tracy, do you feel like there's anything that we haven't touched on, or any question that I haven't asked that you would like me to?
I really do feel just like the LDSPMA podcast, like I really do feel like we're called to create. I feel like obviously creating as in we're creating children, yes, but I feel like we ache to create, we ache to learn and discover, and that's part of who we are. And I feel like the Lord has given us that gift. And if you feel inspired, even if it's just for you, do it. Like if you are just curious about ceramics or painting, or you want to do a podcast, whatever it is, there's so many different forms of creating. We garden a lot and it is just beautiful. And I feel like I am happiest when I create. And I realized that somebody said that the opposite of depression is fun. And I was like, I could see that. But also I feel like creating, because you're progressing and you're learning as you create. So I guess that is my biggest challenge I want to do for myself and for other people, is like, have the time to color, have the time to do something where you're using your hands or your mind and you're creating something, because it really is a God-given gift. And he wants us to use it and improve so we can also bless others in the creation process.
So one of the things I also hear you saying that seems like it's come up, and I mean, it's a kind of, for me, this idea of like eternal progression, that we don't want to be complacent. And you're like, okay, I've learned all the things, I'm good. But I think your wife is kind of the opposite approach. Like, you are always wanting to learn, and even in researching, like, you've done your research, but then you're continue, because like, what else don't I know? And I think that your life and the things that you've talked about today are a really good example of continuing to learn, continuing to develop, and continually, like, I guess, keeping your brain active. Your thoughts?
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely try. And it's hard when you are limited, right? I recognize that it's hard to stay motivated. And I do think with, especially if there is like a health component, or with that comes anxiety or depression or whatever it is. So I think it's really important to do what you can within your own sphere. And again, like I said, give yourself grace, but also challenge yourself a little bit. yeah, I feel grateful that I have been able to. I think that's a gift to be motivated, but also it's hard for me to sit down and be calm. Oh, let's be real. So there's things that I struggle with, which then I get overworked because I overdo and it's this cycle and you can ask my family. But I think it's neat how I feel like if you are willing, even if you don't know what it is and you approach the Lord in that and you're willing to just research and open up, you'll find something. Because everyone has a different gift. And that's the beauty of it, right? We can't all have the same thing. It'd be really boring. But yeah, thank you. That's what I'm trying to do. But I think it's important for all of us to keep that up too.
And, I'm so glad you mentioned that because this is one of the things I wanted to circle back to. It seems like you kind of have like boundless energy, but that your body like has a definite like bounce and that you are trying to learn what that looks like and navigate that difficulty. And so I really like what you were saying is that we could have all of these inspirational ideas and things that we want to do, but that we need to keep it within. And you could be bound by like, and I think in your instance, it might be health that you're like, okay, if I expand myself this much, use
But
all of this energy, then I'm gonna pay for it later. And so to try and kind of like dial it back a little bit, but and so for your instance, it's health, but for maybe someone else that they might have found in a different way. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that process looks like for you?
it depends on even the week sometimes or the month or the year. I've realized for myself personally, like I was on the sub list. I'm like, well, at least I can sub, but then I would commit to something in a month. And then the month came up and the day I committed, I was great. And then the day comes and I'm like, I can't do this. And so I feel like I realistically had to say I can't sub anymore because I wouldn't know what my body would do. And I don't feel like it was fair to them, which was so frustrating and so hard. And it made me so mad. And it just I realized I can do maybe one or two activities a day that I have to be more physical at. And I need to pay myself and exercise or else I'll pay for it later. If that makes sense. And it is hard because I will have days where I'm in bed, to be honest, or I can't use my eyes and then I can't type. And I hate that so much. I hate it so much. When my inflammation comes in my eyes and I can feel it coming, I'm like, ah. So I literally will say, okay, my eyes are acting up. I need to maybe right away. I have like this eye, looks like a VRE that like helps with the eyes, or I have to have every light off and like take a steam shower, steam bath, and have like an eye mask on. And I hate that. And it also makes me nauseous. And so I feel like my whole body just shuts down. But I've noticed a pattern. It will be when I'm go, 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 and I do too much stress, or I'm not giving myself time to exercise and my joints lock up. And it's like this cycle, and my body just says, you're done, and then just shuts me down. And so I wait, maybe go through a 3-week spell or a 2-week spell, and then I have to, like, baby step it back to a healthy spot again, and then I do the same thing, I overdo it, and then so it is so hard to navigate and balance that, and I'm still trying to figure that out, but I do feel like I'm hoping I'm a little bit better at it, but I still have those issues, and so I feel like we're all trying to navigate our own story, and everyone's different, but be realistic with yourself, but also balance it. I don't feel like it's okay to tell your whole life to shut down either. I feel like you can have to navigate what you can do with what you have. I can't sub, but can I go teach in the schools? Absolutely. For like 2 hours. You know what I mean? Can I go volunteer? Yes. I volunteer for my kids' school all the time. So I'm like, what can I do? Because you'll go crazy of the what I can't. So focus on what you can, even if it's like a smaller version of what you used to be able to do, because we're constantly evolving and sometimes there's things you can't do that you used to do. But it's difficult for sure.
I think a part of the creative journey is that like we have kind of expectations. And when they're not realized, it can kind of be a disappointment. So, what would you say to someone that is understanding that they have these unrealized expectations? And how would you tell them to kind of like work through those and work forward?
That is a good question too. I was at SCBWI conference and I'm gonna botch her name, but the one that wrote Tale of Despero, she's amazing, right? And she came and spoke to us and she's like, guys, and I don't remember the exact number. It was like 470 rejection letters that she's had throughout her career. And it was very like, you can hear the, oh, because you think like, well, it's like dating. You're putting your book out there, your novel or your art, and nobody's picking it up. And you're like, why isn't it good enough? Sometimes it's just not the right timing for that company or the publisher. Sometimes they publish something that's similar already and they can't do it again, or sometimes they don't have enough for their quota or whatever it is, or they just didn't like it. It's very subjective. Just keep going because eventually you'll find it, or you can do it and sell it on your own. There are just different options. I feel like we compartmentalize, like it has to be like this, it has to look like this, it has to be this publisher, or it has to be this art store. It doesn't. And that is so disappointing. And you can accept that it's disappointing. And then again, two things could be true. This is awful and I'm so frustrated and I feel so embarrassed, but I'm gonna keep trying. And I feel like that's what happened with my other book. And even my middle one, I was like, I'm gonna self-publish. I've been rejected 4 times. I'm like, I just didn't want the opportunity. And I could have kept putting it out there. Maybe it took 30 to get to the right publisher, but you got a publisher. So I feel like you just need to keep going and it's okay. I feel like we're so rejective sensitive in society today that not everything's gonna work out the way we envisioned it. We just strive for that. And it's okay to adjust and keep making adjustments and just keep putting yourself out there and learning the skill set. Oh, I got rejected. Why? Okay, great. Now I can learn how to improve that. Maybe it was even your query letter, and so it's really important that we would take it as advice and not be offended and more use it as a learning opportunity so you can improve for the next time.
Tracy, where can we find you? How can we support you?
Thank you. Yeah, I have 3 books out. I think I showed you a couple of them. Cute. They're cute. They're on Amazon. My last one came out through Cedar Fort, so you can find it on their website, Barnes& and Noble, Target. But it's author tracydsmith.com is my website, and then it has links to all the stuff, and it has links to my blog and my podcast.
Well, Tracy, thank you. It's so fun to have you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for spending time with me today. If you're looking for a family-friendly, refreshing drink, check out Soda Bears, my family's premium soda company. And for a faith-filled story to share with the little ones, don't miss Sheep Chronicles Baptism, coming this September. Both are available on Amazon. Until next time, keep creating with purpose and faith.